Absorption of water. Root is the primary site for absorption of water. Upon seed germination, the embryonic root, called the radicle, grows and develops into the first root. A developing root has three zones of development: meristematic zone, elongation zone, and maturation zone. The maturation zone is sometimes also called zone of differentiation or root hair zone. Root hairs are extensions of epidermis that serve to increase surface area and aid in absorption of water and soil nutrients. Absorption of water by roots is a passive, pressure driven process. The actual movement of water through a cell membrane is the result of two processes: diffusion and bulk flow. The size of water molecule permits it to pass through the bilayer of plasma membrane. This would be largely a diffusion movement subjected to Fick's law. The membrane also possesses transport proteins. The one involved with water transport is called an aquaporin. The aquaporin protein serve as water filled channel. The flow through this channel is accomplished by submicroscopic bulk flow. In some cases, aquaporins also allow transport of small neutral solutes across a cellular membrane. Recent data indicate that plant aquaporin activity might be regulated by gating mechanisms. The factors affecting the gating behavior possibly involve phosphorylation, pH, calcium, pressure, and temperature. Regulation of aquaporin trafficking may also represent a way to modulate membrane water permeability. A generalized diagram of apical region of plant root and identifies the three zones of activity: meristematic, elongation, and maturation. The meristematic cells are located near the tip of the root. These cells generate the root cap and the upper tissues of the root. In elongation zone, cells elongate rapidly and undergo a final round of division to produce central ring of cells called endodermis. The endodermis divide the roots into two regions: the cortex toward the outside and stele towards the inside. Root hairs first appear in the maturation zone. As plants absorb water from soil, they deplete the soil water near the surface of the roots. This depletion establishes a pressure gradient with respect to neighboring regions of soil. Water moves through soil predominantly by bulk flow driven by a pressure gradient. The water filled spaces in the soil are interconnected. Water moves to the root surface by bulk flow through these spaces down the pressure gradient. Root hairs make intimate contact with soil particles and greatly amplify the surface area that can be used for water absorption by the plant. The soil is a mixture of particles, water, dissolved solutes, and air. Water is adsorbed to the surface of soil particles. As water is absorbed by the plant, the soil solution recedes into smaller pockets, channels, and crevices between the soil particles. Soil water. Soil is a complex medium. It is mixture of organic and inorganic materials, water, dissolved solutes, and air. The water content in soil depend on soil type. The water holding capacity of soil is described in terms of field capacity. It represents the maximum amount of water that soil can hold after allowing free drainage. Clay soil or soil with high humus content have a large field capacity. The water stored in the soil is taken up by the plant roots or evaporated from the topsoil into the atmosphere. If no additional water is applied to the soil, it gradually dries out. The drier the soil becomes, the more tightly the remaining water is retained and more difficult it is for the plant roots to extract it. At certain stage, the uptake of water is not sufficient to meet the plant's need. The amount of water soil contain at which plants wilt beyond recovery is called permanent wilting percentage. The amount of water held by the soil between field capacity and permanent wilting point is the plant available water or water that is available for uptake by plants. Radial movement of water from root surface to the trachea element. Once water has been absorbed into the root hairs or epidermal cells, it must traverse the cortex in order to reach the xylem elements. A root in cross section would have endodermis, cortex, pericycle, xylem, and phloem. Transpiration develops hydrostatic tension in the xylem of root, which draws water from the soil through the intervening tissues of the cortex. The path through which water moves into the xylem cells of roots occur through both apoplast, the continuous system of cell walls and intercellular spaces, and symplast, the continuous system of cell protoplast interconnected by plasmodesmata. Apoplastic movement. Apoplastic pathway essentially involves diffusion and bulk flow of water through intercellular spaces between the cells and the walls of the cells. It is always extended from root hairs or other epidermal cells to the endodermis, where the waterproof band of suberin on the radial walls called the Casparian strip forces substances to enter endodermal cells across their plasma membrane. Suberin act as a barrier to water and solute movement. The endodermis, the innermost layer of cells in the root cortex, surround the stele. From endodermal cells, movement occur through the symplast. Apoplastic pathway is the major pathway for transport of water from epidermis to a trachea element of root. Symplastic movement. The symplastic system is a system of interconnected protoplast. In this system, cytoplasm of neighboring cells are connected through plasmodesmata. In symplastic movement, the water travels through the cells. It occurs it occurs from the root hair cells to the endodermis and across it all the way to the dead xylem cells. Water enters the outermost cells through the cell membrane and then moves from cell to cell through plasmodesmata. Symplastic movement is relatively slower and may be aided by cytoplasmic streaming. Most of the water flows radially into the roots in the roots through the apoplast since the cortical cells are loosely packed and hence offer no resistance to water movements. However, the inner boundary of cortex, the endodermis, is impervious to water because of the presence of Casparian strip. Water molecules are unable to penetrate the layer, so they are directed to enter the cells. The water then moves through the symplast and again crosses a membrane to reach the cells of the xylem. The radial movement of water through the root is ultimately symplastic in the endodermis. This is the only way water and other solutes can enter the vascular cylinder. Once inside the xylem, water is again free to move between cells as well as through them. Root pressure. If the stem of a well watered herbaceous plant is cut off just above the soil, xylem cell sap will exude from the cut surface. Exudation of sap indicates the presence of positive pressure in the xylem. The magnitude of this pressure can be measured by attaching a manometer to the cut surface. This pressure is known as root pressure, term coined by Stephen Hales, because the force that gave rise to exudation originate in the root. The root pressure can be as high as zero point 0.5 megapascal. Roots generate positive hydrostatic pressure by absorbing ions from the dilute soil solution and transporting them into the xylem. The buildup of solutes in the xylem sap leads to decrease in the xylem water potential. This lowering of xylem water potential provides a driving force for water absorption, which in turn leads to a positive hydrostatic pressure in the xylem. Root pressure is most likely to occur when soil water potential are high and transpiration rates are low. When transpiration rates are high, water is taken up so rapidly into the leaves and lost to the atmosphere that a positive pressure never develops in the xylem.